Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Museum of Science. We are here to explore the wonders of the Maya. How exciting is that? Tonight is the first program in our series delving into the realm of the Maya. While we know so much about them, we've learned a lot, there are still so many holes in our knowledge, and the layers of insight keep being revealed to us through the work of scientists like our special guest tonight. Oh, I just did your thing. It is work like his that is peeling away layers of mystery and deepening our understanding of just how sophisticated this culture was. In 2005, Bill Saturno made the discovery of a lifetime. When he dove out of the sweltering Guatemalan heat, he came upon the earliest known murals painted by the Maya. Scholars refer to the site as the Sistine Chapel of the pre-classic Maya era, and one of the most significant archaeological finds of that civilization as it was developing. Many of us fantasize about traveling the world, having adventures like Indiana Jones. Well, Bill Saturno is the real deal, so please join me in giving him a very warm welcome.
Let's see here. We good? Let's see here. Nothing showing. So it's vanished. So I'm just Bill. And I'm now going to have to resort to interpretive dance. So if those that wanted to see images from the Maya world, there it is. Oh, sorry, interpretive dance canceled. We're done. That's not happening now. I know now some of you are disappointed. They're like, well, the picture's nice, but I don't know, that dance might have been really great. Well, maybe next time. Maybe next time. So this is an image of the Maya world. And the different dots on this image represent different Maya sites from different eras of time. The great majority of them are done in yellow, which is from the Maya Classic period, a period that extends from around 200 AD until around 900 AD. And one of the key lines of evidence that scholars used to define what was classic was the presence of hieroglyphic texts, the presence of a sort of grand art style. Right? These are the things that early scholars looked at and said, that's really the best, the pinnacle of Maya civilization, and we'll define that as classic. What came before it, we'll call pre-classic, and what came after it, we'll call post-classic. The implication being that what came before it was not quite as good, like on its way to being classic, but not there yet. And then, of course, what came after it used to have been classic, but is a little bit past its use date. So, of course, that's not really a very accurate picture of how cultures work and places develop and civilizations thrive. Of course, we could talk about things that happened in the pre-classic that were more remarkable than things that happened later at any point in time, and other developments that took place in the post-classic, which are as important, if not more important, than anything that took place before it. So it's really sort of, archaeologists love to divide things time-wise. We do. We even divide classic and post-classic and pre-classic into separate sections. We talk about early pre-classic and middle pre-classic and late pre-classic. That's like so almost early classic that it's incredible. But there's got to be one more. We'll call it proto-classic. That's really past late pre-classic, but not quite early classic. And the same thing with classic. You can have late classic, but then before it becomes post-classic, it's actually terminal, which I certainly would be sensitive about if that was what they were calling me. I've tried in my house to use terms like this to describe my age. I consider myself in my late post-teens, in fact, or my early pre-80s. However you want to think about it, you could certainly make up time terms to do it. So today I'm actually going to be talking about two different time periods for the Maya. One, the pre-classic, right? And one, the classic, the late classic. And I'm going to show murals from both of those times, which are trying to accomplish very different things using the same kind of medium, that is painted walls. Now, it wasn't too long ago when a map like this in the Maya world actually looked more like this, right? When none of those sites known. In fact, it wasn't really until the middle of the 19th century that Maya sites became known to the public. And they became known mainly through the publication of one particular book. But one of the reasons that they were so unknown is because cities that used to look like this is the city of El Mirador in Guatemala, an artist's reconstruction of what it looked like at its height, now look like this. So it's no wonder that they sort of were left undiscovered until a politician by the name of John Lloyd Stevens was sent as a special envoy to Guatemala. He brought with him a friend of his, an artist named Frederick Catherwood, and they published a book, a series of books, called Incidents of Travel. They were published in the early 1840s. They went through 12 printings in their first year of publication. They outsold every other book except the Bible, right? That's pretty good, right? You have to admit, like, if you're up in competition, it's like us and the Bible, like 1 and 2 on the New York Times bestseller list. That's a good list to be on. But one of the reasons this book was so popular, one, Stevens was an excellent writer, right? The prose involved in discovering these ancient, mysterious places, these places that no one had heard of before. And then that coupled with Catherwood's lithographs, his drawings of these statues shrouded in forest, these pyramids buried under the oppressive growth of trees. What that implied in terms of this civilization having been lost, that it had fallen out of knowledge, right? No one knew about it. Certainly the people that walked these forests knew it existed. And one of the first things that Stevens says to us is that there really should be no doubt as to who built these things, that the people that made these great monuments are likely the ancestors of the people that live here today, which was really sort of insightful, given that it actually took scholars about another 40 to 50 to 80 years to really demonstrate that fact, that there was a connection between the modern people living there and the people that had lived there before. In fact, most of the time when we hear about the Maya or the ancient Maya, it's sort of prefaced by the idea that they disappeared, right? They collapsed, they vanished. Their cities became abandoned and then forests grew up, and we don't know what happened to them, except that there are actually 7 million Maya alive today, right? So living in the countries of Guatemala and Mexico, Belize, and Honduras. So they're there. Their ancestors, the ones that built these things. One of the reasons these monuments were also so intriguing, not only because of the portraiture of them, the mystery of them, but they were covered with a hieroglyphic script that no one could read, right? Now, one of the first people to say he could read them was a crazy old guy named Augustus Le Plongeon. And Augustus Le Plongeon had decided that he was, by his own reckoning, 123 years old. And having lived past the age when most people died, he decided that he had reached a state of, as he called it, living petrification. And that perhaps he would actually age in reverse Merlin-like. And what he said to everyone was, I can read Maya hieroglyphic script. Can you? And they would say, well, no, I don't know what it says. Well, clearly I do. So he actually couldn't read any of it. He just made it up. But he went beyond that, in fact, in saying that not only could he read Maya script, but that Maya writing was, in fact, the mother tongue. It was a universal tongue that was spoken all over the world. And that he even went so far to say that Christ himself did not speak Aramaic, he spoke Mayan. And his last words on the cross were not, my God, why have thee forsaken me?" but instead were, "Now, now, sinking black ink over nose," which of course makes much more sense. So now, Le Plongeon couldn't read them. No one could read them, right? The mystery of this historic text was something that really fascinated students of the Maya. And in reality, today we can read about 85 to 90% of what they've written. But it really wasn't until about 20 years ago that we really started to make strides in decipherment. And throughout the 19th century, we could read very little. And most of the 20th century, we could read very little other than the dates they inscribed on the monuments. We understood the numerical system. But we didn't understand that they wrote in not an alphabet, but a kind of syllabary, where they used sounds to write words. And now we can read their history. Now, their artwork is quite spectacular. And this is a panel. It's from the site of Yaxchilan in Mexico. The historical text is beautiful, but all of you see these lines? That's because this is a panel that was chopped up with a saw. It was chopped up with a saw, and it was stolen out of Mexico. It was looted from the site of Yaxchilan and spirited away in 4 pieces because it was too large to carry in one. And even before people could read Maya hieroglyphic text, the beauty of these sculptures lent themselves to being chopped up and sold on the black market. They would actually go into these sites with tree saws, 2-handed saws, and they would stand on opposite sides of these monuments and simply chop the faces off of them to make them lighter to transport. The idea that this history was being lost, that this art, and even the potential to decipher the script by recording the signs, was really put in jeopardy by this whole process. And so the Maya world really needed a hero. They needed an archaeological hero. And of course, the first person they would get would be Indiana Jones, but they couldn't get Indiana Jones because he was a fictional character. But they could in fact get a man by the name of Ian Graham. And this is a photo of Ian Graham. You can see he has the whip, he has the fedora. He founded a project at Harvard University's Peabody Museum known as the Corpus of Maya Hieroglyphic Inscriptions. And his life's work was to record these carved hieroglyphic monuments before they were spirited away by looters. This is an individual that was often shot at by the looters. This is someone that had to hide under the body of a fallen comrade in order to avoid being killed by the looters. This is someone that spent 40 years tromping around the forests of Guatemala and Mexico, recording with photography and in drawing and mapping these incredible Maya sites and everything that lie in them. And he was given a MacArthur Genius Award for his work. He could never read the writing himself. He's still alive. He's still alive in England today. He could not read the writing, but the work he did recording it was the foundation for the decipherment that took place. We would never know the history of this great people if it weren't for people like Ian Graham recording it. And right after I had finished my degree at Harvard, I grew up wanting to be Ian Graham. I didn't want to be like Ian Graham. I wanted to be Ian Graham. And I got the great honor of working with Ian Graham while I was a student. And after I had finished my degree, he gave me the opportunity to work on the Corpus project. He was getting older. He decided that he didn't want to be traipsing around the forest anymore, and he was advertising for the position around the Department of Anthropology at Harvard, saying he was looking for someone, as he put it, young and foolish, to carry on the cause, to take the torch. And he assured me after the fact that I had not been his youngest candidate for this job, but that I had impressed him with my excessive foolishness. And that was my greatest qualification. And he actually sent me to Guatemala with a very specific mission. there were two sites. One that he had visited, he had actually buried a monument. He hadn't had time to document it thoroughly, so he buried it so that it would not be uncovered by looters and taken away. And he was curious now, 20 years later, if the monument was still there. And so he sent me to Guatemala with the mission of visiting that place, going to that site and ensuring that that monument was still in place. The other was another site, a site that had been known for a very long time, known as Xultún. Xultún means the faraway place, or the faraway stone. And he wanted me to go to Xultún because there was a rumor of recent looting there, and that a new monument had apparently surfaced, and he'd hoped that I would be able to go in, photograph that monument, and document it before it was taken away. So that was my mission. I went to Guatemala, very specific instructions. He told me to hire a local guide. The guide that I was to hire was named Bernie Mittelstedt. I know it doesn't sound like a local guide. I know that. There are individuals of German descent that have lived in Guatemala for generations. Bernie is one of them. Ian told me he had excellent vehicles, but perhaps not to trust him fully. That he had a sense that he was probably involved in the looting. But nonetheless, he had great vehicles, and I should have him lead me on my way. The logo of the corpus. So I went to Guatemala, and I began at Ian's house. And when I got to Ian's house, I made contact with Bernie, and Bernie came by to see me, and he said, "Oh, unfortunately, we can't go to that first site. It's too far away, the roads are out, we'll never get there and back within a week. So that's really out of the question. Xultún, the mule train will head to Xultún, but it won't leave until the end of this week, so we have about a week's time with nothing to do. So, sorry. But, in case you're curious, there is this other site. There's this place that's recently been uncovered. There are rumors that there are 3 carved hieroglyphic monuments, and we can get there and back in a day. So if you want to go there while we're waiting, that seems like something that we could do." I said, "Well, that's fine, that sounds perfect. It's within the sort of realm of things the corpus is dedicated to. It's certainly not part of my specific mission, but part of the broader mission. So let's go to that place." He said, "This is an easy place to get to. We'll just have to drive through Tikal and Xultún, and from Xultún, we have about a 2.5-hour drive to an archaeological site known as Xultún, and from Xultún, we'll begin a walk, about 6 kilometers. So all told, it should be about 3.5 hours, I imagine, from Xultún. Now, once we got to Xultún, I probably should have known things wouldn't go exactly as planned. I say that because there's a sign in Xultún that says, Xultún, 40 kilometers. Camino en mal estado, road in bad shape. Now that might have been an indication that problems were ahead. A better indication would have been the fact that the sign itself was broken in half, and the arrow on the sign was pointing straight down, perhaps towards hell. So the idea that the road had been in bad shape when the sign was in good shape probably should have been an indication that this was not going to be a 3-hour tour, and it certainly was not. It wasn't long after we left Xultún that we came upon, this is us driving, that's Bernie's excellent vehicle. This is the road between Xultún and Xultún. You can see it, it's quite lovely. It wasn't long after that we came upon a tree across the road. There it is. It was at this point I realized that perhaps Bernie, though having an excellent vehicle, wasn't the best at expedition supply. Since we had no chainsaw, we simply had a chain. And 2 machetes. 1, 2. 6 guys, 1 chain, 2 machetes, great big tree. This is not a good combination. We thought we might move the tree with that chain and Bernie's excellent vehicle. His vehicle is not nearly that excellent. The tree did not move, the vehicle did not move, and so we had to cut a new path around this tree. That took some time, certainly put a dent in our schedule. But after all, once we got around the tree, what are the chances that we would possibly find another tree in that 40-kilometer stretch? If you're a betting person, 18 is the number of trees you should bet on. 18 trees, 12 and a half hours it took us. We had, of course, brought supplies for one day. So we exhausted those supplies around lunch of day one. We arrived at the site of Xultún at night, and we set up camp. This is camp. I love this particular image. Remember, I'm carrying about 60 pounds of camera equipment. I, of course, choose to take this photo, which is not that great, but does demonstrate the entire supply of food that we had for the 6 of us. That is 1 can of beans and 1 jar of cheese. Cheese, as you know, shouldn't come in jars. Nonetheless, that's it. The next day, we had decisions to make. We actually used the rest of the water that morning to make coffee. Unfortunately, I don't drink coffee, so I didn't have any. But we decided, what should we do? Decisions needed to be made. We could, in fact, drive back to Xultún and resupply. We had just opened the road. Probably only take us about 2.5 hours. Or we could walk the 6 kilometers to this new site. Now, we decided that 6 kilometers, I mean, it's like an hour, hour and a half, tops. We walk to the site, take some pictures, draw a few quick maps, illustrate some of the monuments very quickly, maybe spend 2 hours on site. We walk back. The whole thing probably takes, 4 to 6 hours, drive back to Xultún. We're a little late for lunch. So we skip breakfast. We'll be in Xultún for lunch. That seems like an excellent plan, and I certainly went along with it. Now, after all, we're walking 6 kilometers to the north. I had a GPS. A lot of folks have said I got lost in the jungle. I didn't. I knew right where I was. Didn't know where we were going, but I knew where I was. We went off into the jungle, which was great because I could map our progress, right? So I know in my head we're supposed to go 6 kilometers, generally north. We started off the walk by walking 3 kilometers, essentially due west. Now, why we did that, you might ask? Because in the jungle, you do not walk in a straight line. In the jungle, you follow existing paths, even if those paths don't go exactly where you want to go. In fact, even if the path doesn't go anywhere near where you want to go. So we walked that 3 kilometers because at the end of that 3 kilometers, there was an excellent path that all of these guys knew about. It was a spectacular path, very easy to walk on, and we made excellent time on that path. On that path, in the next hour and a half, 2 hours, we covered about 6 kilometers, ostensibly due east. So having walked 9 total kilometers, at that point we had netted about 100 to 150 meters north. So a lot of walking, not a lot of progress. But at that point we actually turned north, which was helpful, and we made good progress north, except maybe too good, because we then turned back to the east, followed by the south, west again, then north again. And eventually, we found an archaeological site. Now, what's remarkable is I've now worked in this area for almost 20 years, and I know where all the archaeological sites are. To be able to pick a path that missed all of them for 22 kilometers that beats the odds, right? That is unlikely to happen ever again. Right? But it happened. We got to a site, we walk up, it has this very large pyramid. Looters have dug a trench into the back of it, it turned it into a tunnel, and they've essentially dug about, as we find out later, 45 meters, 150 feet into this structure before they turn and dig a different direction and dig that way and dig all over the place. They didn't find what they were looking for. We walked around to the front of that pyramid with the expectation of seeing the 3 carved hieroglyphic monuments. And when we got to the front of that pyramid, we saw nothing. We saw some trees and no carved hieroglyphic monuments. Not even evidence that there had ever been hieroglyphic monuments. No evidence that looters had ever dug on the front of the building, in fact. So this was not the right site. Now, it was 9.5 hours later, it's 4:30 in the afternoon. We've had absolutely no water, and the only food we've had all day were 2 limes that we found at an abandoned looters camp. 2 limes split 6 ways. Yummy, right? So the guys say, don't worry. There are vines here in the forest. There are vines, when you cut them open, you can shower in the water that pours out of them. I was like, okay, well, if there are shower vines, then we can stay. But I have no idea what a shower vine looks like. And so they said, well, we'll go off and find them. You stay here. Like, excellent plan. So I stayed there, but it was hot and uncomfortable there. I was irritated that I had walked now so far, and I now found myself essentially in the absolute middle of nowhere. 8 kilometers, by the way, as the crow flies from where I had parked my car, but 22 kilometers the journey we took, and no carved hieroglyphic monuments to speak of. I'm carrying 60 pounds of camera equipment, which I've used to take a picture of Cheese Whiz, and this is really all I have. So I decide to go around to the back side of the building. I think it'll probably be much cooler inside that looter's excavation. The sun won't be shining there. It's not hot in the forest because it's about 100 degrees. It's March, which is the dry season. It's really an unpleasant time to be walking around in the sun in the middle of Guatemala. So I head into this looter's excavation in total darkness, and I sit down the first place that I see that seems like it might be comfortable. So I walk in, I sit in a great big pile of bat droppings. And I thought, awesome. You know, my thought at that time was excessive foolishness, right? I'm like, Ian has got, what is he going to say? I'm like, I'm not supposed to be here anyway. I didn't go to any of the places I was supposed to be at. And now here I am sitting in a tunnel in a pile of bat crap. Terrific. With guys that I don't know, that with no water, that are finding shower vines, which really seems like a joke to me, right? Like, I doubt the existence of the shower vine, I admit it. It seems like the kind of joke you play on a chubby gringo that comes down from Cambridge and is dying in the middle of the forest. You say, oh, we have shower vines here. And you say, oh, really? That sounds terrific. Hot and cold shower vines. Excellent. So, as I'm sitting there in the smell of ammonia from the bat droppings, I take out a flashlight and I shine it up really just to see if there are bats above me that are going to add to the pleasure that is this day. And when I shine that flashlight up on the wall, that's what I see. And I would really love for my reaction to have been your reaction. That, wow. My reaction was nice. Like, can't drink it. And they're probably going to kill me for it. Because, of course, all of Ian's words come back that these guys, I wouldn't trust them, probably involved with looting. Excellent. This is the perfect thing. The first time a mural is found, by the way, since 1946 in the Maya area. Right? 55 years have gone by where we've seen any well-preserved Maya wall painting. Not that they didn't paint them, but they just didn't last. They didn't endure in that nasty tropical environment with dramatic changes in heat and humidity. And so seeing this, I thought, take a picture, which I took with my first digital camera in total darkness. Still didn't use any of that damn equipment I was carrying around. Took this picture and walked back out and sat in my hammock. This is a better image, just so we can see what we're talking about. It's spectacular. That's how these paintings were found. It was entirely by accident. But then what begins after that is a 10-year project dedicated to uncovering them and preserving them in situ so that they still remain there for generations of Guatemalans and scholars and Maya to see and experience. Now, it is a place of pilgrimage today by many of the modern Maya that live. This is a shaman from Santiago Atitlan. He came to visit the site and to ask a number of questions about the site, questions about me and how I was involved in the discovery of it. They tell a story of its discovery that's very different from the one I just told you. I'm really a lot cooler in their version. In their version, I'm like a superhero. In my version, I'm the idiot that I really am. But in their version, what they saw was that when I entered into that cave, it's a tunnel, when I entered into that space, I actually journeyed into the underworld. In fact, I wasn't just dying, I died. And I entered the underworld. And when in the underworld, I was actually given access to sacred knowledge in the way of these paintings, and was allowed to return to the surface of the earth in order to bring that knowledge back to them. I told you, much cooler in their version. It's still one of the most moving things that I've ever been told. This idea that somehow I have died and got to come back, if only to share this painting with the people that are descendant from those who painted it. Now, the painting itself is spectacular. It was painted sometime before 100 BC, right? It's actually about 900 years earlier than the painting that we knew from 1946. It was about 500 years earlier than the painting that we knew from the site of Xultún that vanished. It was destroyed after archaeologists excavated it in the 1940s. So nothing about this painting says it's the first one they ever painted, right? Nothing about this says practice, right? The quality of the line, the calligraphy of the stroke. The fact that they don't even end the brush strokes, right? They always take a brush stroke and they paint it, and then they put dots at the end. Just doot, 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 just because they can. Really remarkable. The story on the wall, even more remarkable. There are a series of trees, 4 of them, symbols of the 4 cardinal directions of the world. And each of those trees is this monstrous bird. Not a normal bird, right? We know it's not a normal bird because of a number of things. One, it has spear points in its wings, and most birds do not. 2, it is covered in jewels, right? On its tail, which is glorious, got great big talons. It has jewels coming off of its head, off of its headdress, and it has a 2-headed snake in its beak. And it has the symbols for sun, for the day, keen, and darkness in its 2 wings as it stands in this tree, right? Now, in front of it is a character. Both of these characters are individuals that we know from Maya mythology, from much later Maya mythology that's written down in the 17th century, right? In which they talk about this monstrous bird, in that time named Bukub Kakish. Archaeologists like to call him the principal bird deity because we see him quite often. The interaction is usually between this bird deity and this hero, a hunter, known as One Hunter, or Hunapu, First Lord. And he's always marked by this single black spot on his cheek. So here we have this version. Now, this version that we know from the Popol Vuh, this book written down in the 17th century, tells us about Hunapu, right, this First Lord, First Hunter, shooting this bird out of the sky. And so that the real sun can rise. That's the purpose of it, right? It's like this vainglorious false sun that sits in his tree in the east, and the real sun won't come up until he's been vanquished. For the Maya, it was sort of a symbol of the primordial world, right, before creation. This sort of monstrous thing that inhabits the 4 corners, the area that's bound by forest. Now, as we go along this wall, we see here he's making a sacrifice. He's actually running a tree branch through his genitals. That's where they let blood from. This is the blood of creation. I'll show another image in a moment, which is even more obvious. But he's doing so in a field of flowers. You see these little blossoms. And these blossoms have little swirls of scent essentially rising up out of them. The whole bottom of the painting colored yellow from these flowers. But as we move down the wall, it's really like we're turning the pages of a book, right? Like we're getting to read this story. And we have that same bird. This part of the mural is broken, but you can see his wing is there. Here's the two-headed snake. The jewel that used to be on his forehead is now floating in the air, blood dripping off of it. The sacrifice that's being made here by our hero, our first lord, our Hunahau, he has these great little birds tied to a basket on his back. He's actually floating just above the ground level. And he makes an offering of his own blood. You can see the gouts of blood coming from his wounds. And he makes an offering of a turkey, right? That's actually bent backwards. Here's its head, its little waddle, right? Here's its talons, its tail feathers, its wing. It has 3 stones piled up on it and sort of smoke rising from these stones that are heating it. He's being cooked as an offering for this bird. And it's as though we turn the page once again. And we get another tree, right? One of these 4 trees of the 4 cardinal directions with another bird. In this instance, the bird snake is missing a head. It's floating there. The offering being made is being made by our hunter once again. This time he stands on the ground, right? He's not floating in the air. And he has a little deer trussed to his belt. The sacrifice that he makes, I can bother that yet, is a deer. You can see its hooves, right? Its belly split open, those same stones piled up. Its other hoof, it's in a rather dramatic position. Its face looking downward. And then we turn the page again. And when we do, we have yet another tree, this time on the banks of a flowing river, right? We have our protagonist, he's got a fish at this time in a net on his back, and the sacrifice that he makes is of a catfish, bent backwards over that pyre, this time with 5 stones piled up on top of it. What's remarkable is that all of these sacrifices are sacrifices that we've actually seen before. And we've seen them on these 4 pages of one of the only books we have preserved from the Maya world. It was a book found in the library in Dresden. It somehow survived the conquest, survived the burning of books done by the Spanish, and was spirited back to Europe along with 3 others. One found in Madrid, one found in Paris, and this one found in Dresden, the best preserved. And on these 4 pages of the Dresden Codex, at the bottom of each page, which are called the New Year's pages, are a series of ceremonies that are done to renew the world at the new year. And those ceremonies involve making a sacrifice in front of 4 trees. Trees that are labeled in the hieroglyphic texts by their cardinal directions. So the tree of the east, the tree of the west, the tree of the north, the tree of the south. But also labeled as the tree of that monstrous bird. It's that bird's tree of the east, that bird's tree of the west. And the sacrifices that are being offered are the hock of a deer, a fish piled on 2 stones, a turkey, and incense, or the smell of flowers. Right? So this is from around 1400 AD. So 1500 years later, on the ceremonies to renew the world, enacted by a priest, a ritual specialist, making a sacrifice of these things, is actually doing the same thing that the gods did in great antiquity to organize the world in the first place. So they're reenacting this pageant of creation 1,500 years later. In fact, this is a pageant that's still reenacted today by those same folks from Santiago that came down to visit the site. All of this was done to essentially set up the world so that kings could rule it. Kings related to those gods, Kings that acceded to the throne on top of great wooden scaffolds. Kings that are handed their crowns by attendants, dressed up with the headdress of that monstrous bird. And a text between them that actually ends in the word ahau, or lord, or king. This is a coronation scene from the 1st century or 2nd century BC. And it's identical to the carved hieroglyphic monuments that we see throughout the classic period. For the next 1,000 years, Maya kings accede to the throne, receiving the same crown, sitting on the same scaffolds. Right? So this idea of the classic representing a pinnacle, perhaps in some senses, but this is evidence that all of those things that we expect to see only in the classic were certainly present in the pre-classic. They were present in the 2nd century BC, and they were present at the site of San Bartolo, a site, by the way, that is minuscule compared to other Maya sites. Now, keeping this mural intact was not an easy thing to do. It involved the use of wall painting conservators, both from the Getty and the National Park Service, to actually inject plaster material, grout, the same material that the mural is made of, essentially to fill the cracks, just to keep it from moving. Nothing was done to the surface of this. All of the colors that you see are the colors as they exist today and are the colors as they existed 2,000 years ago. Now, in 2010, one of my archaeology students from Boston University, a kid by the name of Max Chamberlain, comes down to spend a semester abroad in Guatemala to learn Spanish and to practice archaeology. And when he comes down, he says, "You know, Bill, you found a mural. I'm going to find a mural." And I was like, "Okay, Max. I mean, 55 years hasn't gone by, but whatever, that's fine. It's always good to have goals, good to have dreams." And so Max spent every day in his lunch hour mapping the site of Xultún. The site that I had started my journey from is now the site that I'm investigating, right? Having spent 10 years at San Bartolo, we moved on to Xultún, its big neighbor to the south. And Max spends his lunch hours poking his head into looters' tunnels, going to looters' excavations, just looking for paint. Now, Max found, according to him, about 6 murals, pretty much every day. Max was not really discerning in finding paintings, but whenever he saw paint, sometimes a handprint, sometimes just a little color, it was a mural in his mind. And one day, actually the day that I finished all of the conservation work inside the tunnels at San Bartolo, leaving those things intact, the overburden of the building on top of it supported, so they would be there and endure for as long as we could imagine. Max came and said, "Bill, I really did it. I really found a painting." I was like, "Max, you say that every day." He's like, "Yeah, but I did it this time. I found one. It's spectacular." And he shows me this drawing that he's made. And on this drawing, there's this guy, he's a king, he's got this headdress and an ear spool, and it's really spectacular. And I was like, "Well, that's great, Max." Of course, you know, I just spent the last 10 years dealing with the last mural we found. I just finished it today, so not really interested in a brand new mural really just yet. Like, give me an hour maybe, something, like to relish in the fact that I've now done with the first one that I found and was responsible for. And then it took about a week, and it was actually on Easter Sunday. I finally went out and I said, "All right, Max, let's see the murals." And this is Max's mural. I know it's not as cool as the one I just showed, but for Max, this was a circle. You can see the red line. He thought this was the ear. He thought that there was a face here. But then there's this red line. There's this red line. There's not a lot to see. And it's not really a surprise. The looters had uncovered it at some point. It had been left exposed for God knows how long. We have no idea how long it was left out in the rain, in the elements. And so it's not surprising that there's nothing there. And I said, "Well, Max, that's great. This room was painted. And it's a room inside a house. It wasn't some great temple. It wasn't some monumental architecture. It's a room in a house." I thought, that's really great. You know, all we can really do, Max, is find out how big the space is. We can say how much had been painted, but unfortunately, we're never going to know what was on the walls. It's just not going to preserve. We're so close to the surface that it's just not going to be there. But it's cool that we at least get to know that it was painted, that we have evidence of this great residential painting in this house. And I said, all right, let's just find out how big it is. I want to touch the back wall, right? Now, I got your wall. I want to touch the other wall. I have 3 walls. I know how big the space is. That's all I need to know. Figured I had about 30 centimeters, about a foot, because looters had excavated into the building. It's about a foot until I reached the back wall, and I excavated that foot. And when I did, that's what I saw. And I thought, this one, I laughed out loud, right? The other one, I was like, nice. This one, I was just like, what are the chances, right, that this would actually be, that it's preserved? And in fact, what we're looking at was the face of a Maya king, right? This is his great big green-blue headdress, and his eyelash is right here. His eye comes here. This is his nose. This green stuff are feathers coming off of him. He's got this great red hat that he's wearing. It's really spectacular that this would preserve. And this is the building that it's in. It's a tiny little building. It's really only about 3 meters tall. And it's right below the surface. And this is where the looters cut in. And you can see that image on the back wall. But what's in this room, for me, is more remarkable than I could ever have imagined. The walls were painted. The back wall had an image, right, of our Maya king, seated right here, right? His great green feathered headdress, right? His red sort of hat that he's wearing, this little white scepter in his hand, this other bag behind him. My favorite guy in this painting, by the way, that guy. You know why I love that guy? It's like the world's first photobomb, right? I mean, he's just sort of like, did you get me? Am I in this? He's actually labeled as a batsam. It's a performer, but he's probably helping as a servant holding up the headdress behind him. This guy in front is sort of kneeling, and he's got a title there. It's Itzin Tak. It means younger brother obsidian, something that we don't really understand just yet. But also of interest on the walls are not just this painting of the people, but a whole series of other things, these little texts, little numerical tables that are on the walls. Maya numbers are very simple and very elegant. They represented any number imaginable with 3 signs. The dot, which is the number 1, right? You have 1 dot, 1, 2 dots, 2, 3, 4, and then a bar for 5. You never get more than 3 bars and 4 dots, the number 19. After that, they use the 0. Right? One of the great inventions of the Maya was the 0, but the 0 to them isn't the same as the 0 to us. To us, a 0 represents nothing, an absence of a number. For them, this is also the glyph for full, complete, right? 0 means that it's so full that you have to start another unit, right? You need to move up. And what these are actually 5-digit numbers, in which these are 1s, these are 20s, right? These are 360s, approximately a year. These are 2360s, 7200s, and these are 7200s, or 144,000s. They're enormous numbers. And each of these columns ranges, and this is like 2,400,000 something or other. And they're counting days. But what they're counting isn't just days. It's interesting because the Maya had lots of different calendars, not unlike us. They had a solar calendar, 365 days. They had a ritual calendar of 260 days. They combined those two to make a long calendar, 52 years long, which was 18,980 days. Each of these numbers is divisible by 18,980 and 260 and 365. They're all common factors. They're also divisible by 584, which is the period of Venus. They're also divisible by 780, which is the period of Mars. They're also related to a shorter period of 170 some odd days, which is a period of Mercury. They're also tied to a 2,000 some odd day period of the eclipse cycles. The archaeoastronomer Tony Avini looked at this table and thought, if I were a Maya, this would be my room. Right? Because this is about the geekiest room you'll ever see in the Maya lowlands. Because what they're doing is they're actually writing these tables that the only place we've ever seen anything like this are in the books, are in those preserved books. This is another table. In this table, there are a series of numerical columns, and at the top of each column is a glyph of the moon. And each of these columns represents a sum from the previous column. And in each column, they're adding 177 days, sometimes 178. And the reason they're doing that is because that's how they calculated the period of the moon. The moon takes about 29 and a half days to go through its cycle, right? But the Maya didn't like fractions so much, so they used multiplication to get rid of them. So they did 6 lunar cycles, was 177 days. And that's close, but it's not perfect. The same way we use our leap year, right? That 365 days is good, but 366 days every 4 years is better. Even better is every 100 years you don't do a leap year. Right? The centuries, you don't do leap year. Except if it's divisible by 400, then you do a leap year. Right? That's our system. We thought the Maya had crazy calendars. Our calendars are just as strange. But what they're doing is they're adding that correction factor, so that in the grand total, you have 162 lunations. And it comes out to 4,784 days, which calculates the period of the moon to an error of about 20 seconds over a 13-year period, right? That's what they're doing in this room. They are calculating these things. They are writing them on the wall. They're erasing them. They're writing them again. They're making corrections the same way they do in Maya books, right? These are these same tables, the same numerical table that I just showed you. This is, of course, from the Dresden Codex. That wall was painted at Xultún in 760 AD. This was done 800 years later. They also do this thing on the wall in Xultún. It's the only other time we've ever seen this. It's a ring number. This was discovered by David Stewart. A ring number, see how they put this little circle around this number 9, or this number 14? That means that this date that they're giving us here, we count backwards. So that it actually takes us into the previous period of creation, which gives us 3207 BC. So they're just counting way back in time. The question is, why are they doing this? Why these incredible calculations about time and the motion of planets? And how do they relate to that king on the wall? In 760 AD, Maya kings are tying the events of their daily lives to the motions of planets and stars. They are tying them to this concept of cyclical time, that events that happen in their lives are repeating events that happened in deep mythology. They are repeating the events that happened by their patron gods, their patron deities. And when they set out to establish their kingdoms, what they're doing is they are, in fact, reestablishing kingdoms that have these long mythic histories. In the same way that that priest in the Dresden Codex is reenacting the creative act of the gods, the kings are reenacting the creative acts of their ancestors and their gods. But the important aspect of it is they're doing it on specific dates, right? Because that's the date when the event repeats. And if you cannot tell me when it really happened the first time, then and where the moon was, and where the sun was, and where Venus is in the sky, and where Mars is going to be, then it's not exactly the events we should be predicting. And that's what the Maya were about. in the 7th and 8th century. They were about tying their lives to these cycles in the stars, to being able to fix their lives, which they knew to be minuscule in comparison to the great cosmic cycles around them. To give them meaning, they had to be connected to events that had come long before them and repeatedly happened through time. Now, who painted these things? Who made these calculations? On this wall of the room, the wall that Max found, this is what Max saw. This is what we excavated. And this is what we're able to see. 3 guys, painted in black, dressed in only loincloths, with a single medallion around their chest and a medallion in their headdress. This one is labeled as Xultún, the older brother, the elder obsidian to the junior that was shown on the other wall. These guys are shown as youths. That's the title above them, right? It's an order of people. Usually in Maya court scenes, you see everyone dressed up in all their best stuff. If you're going to appear before the king, you dress up to be before the king. You're there to be seen. In this instance, we have a bunch of guys painted black wearing loincloths. And they're all wearing the same loincloth. I mean, not exactly the same loincloth, obviously. They're different loincloths. That would be gross. But they're wearing loincloths and these headdresses that we see them on. They're a uniform. It's a cohort. It's an order. And one of the remarkable things is that when we actually excavated, one of my graduate students, Franco Rossi, is going to finish his degree this year from Boston University, when he excavated under the floor behind this building, he found a relatively simple burial. It was buried with 1 pot and 2 artifacts. The medallion for his chest and the medallion for his headdress. The guys that occupied and used this room, that are copying tables out of Maya books, that are putting tables into Maya books, that are making those calculations, that are interacting with the kings, that are making those plans that justify the lives of those royal activities. Those guys are living and dying in this house group attached, we think, to the palace. These are our Tah, our brothers Tah, our elder, our junior, and the other sets of titles that go with them. And this is what we're now finding at sites like Xultún and San Bartolo, sort of adding mystery, but taking away mystery, right? We have more knowledge about the Maya today than we've ever had. And at the same time, there are so many aspects of their lives and their knowledge that we are still figuring out every day. Thank you. I am happy to take questions.
Does anybody have any questions?
Where did the looters take the stuff to?
Where do the looters, what do they do with it?
Yeah.
They generally sell it to a middleman. That pot will sell at auction or on the black market anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000. So the looters make very little on what they do, and they do so to survive, essentially. It's a very dangerous job the looters have because they're thieves, and there's no honor among thieves. Looters tend to work with family members so that if they go out as 4 and they come back as 3, they have to answer questions, right? If they go out with people they don't know, accidents happen. So, but that's what happens to the stuff.
Next question here.
How were the murals preserved for so long?
How are the murals preserved for so long? One of the things that the Maya do is that they build one building on top of another, right? And so when they're done with a building, they bury it. And it just so happens that when they were done with this building, they buried it under an enormous pyramid. It's about 26 meters tall. And so in the end, this painting, or 2 walls of the painting, because in reality, of the 4 walls, the Maya destroyed 2 of them because they were in the way. So they broke them into tiny bits and they threw them into the fill of the room, and we found more than 4,000 of those fragments that we're putting together. But when they buried this whole thing under that other pyramid, it ends up being covered by about 15 meters of earth, which means in the 2,000 years it's existed, its temperature and its humidity had remained relatively constant. One of the first things that we did before we excavated any of it is that we actually spent 2 years monitoring the environment inside the tunnel the looters had left to see what our changes in temperature and humidity were going to be like, so that if we uncovered it, would we be damaging it? And we just happened to be lucky in that 15 meters underground, artificial ground nonetheless, 15 meters underground, in Guatemala it is 83 degrees every day. It is 98% humidity every day. Every hour of the day, doesn't matter what's going on outside or what's going on inside. We have environmental monitoring systems that send all of that data to a satellite that we can then download it from here so that we can keep track if there are any changes. If a tree falls down and opens a crack, and water starts to percolate in and starts running across the surface of the paintings, we'll know, right? But as it stands, 83 degrees and 98% humidity for the last 2,000 plus years has kept it as it looks. Yes?
In general terms, what percentage of all of the Mayan sites in the region have been actually excavated?
What percentage of Maya sites have been excavated? Of all the Maya sites that we know to exist, we have excavated less than 1% of them. We have done excavations in less than 1% of the sites. The sites themselves that we've done excavations at, we've excavated less than 10% of those sites. So of all of the remains we possibly could excavate, right, we are at 10% of 1%, or 0.1%. A long way to go. There's so much there. Now, a lot of that has been touched by looters. I would estimate that of the number of Maya sites that exist, the number of Maya sites that have been touched by looters borders around 99 to 100%, right? So there's a long way for us to go. But even once sites have been looted, like San Bartolo and Xultún, though that's damaging, as archaeologists, if we just let it go and then we abandon those sites simply because they've been damaged, we lose the opportunity to find these things that we wouldn't otherwise find, right? Because I certainly wouldn't have dug that 45-meter long tunnel into the building at San Bartolo, nor would I have necessarily dug that tunnel into the building at Xultún. So the damage that they've done, we're still recovering something from it. But it's remarkable to think that after more than 100 years of systematic excavation in Maya sites, beginning at the site of Copan in the 1890s, after more than 100 years, we're still just scratching the surface.
Next question here.
Can you compare the complexity of Mayan civilization to Egyptian civilization? Because it seems, in terms of astronomy and some mathematics, that it's a very advanced society. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on it.
In terms of astronomy and math, the Maya are really at the top of the class, right? Things like recognizing Venus as a single planetary body. The Maya recognized it as one, the Greeks did not. Because Venus is strange. It appears for about 260 days, and then it disappears for about 50 days. Then it comes back for about 260 days, then it disappears for like 8 days. So it's constantly reappearing in different parts of the sky, but they understood that to be one. The invention of the zero, of course, is also a real sort of boon, not used in much of the old world, right? That's sort of two independent inventions of the concept of a placeholder and the use of mathematics with places, right? So that certainly is an accomplishment in that regard. But we're also talking about very different times, right? If we're talking about, pyramids of Khufu in Egypt, the size of them is dramatic compared to what we see in the Maya area, even of some of the largest pyramids. And the methods with which they were built are very different. Their purpose is similar in some instances, different in others. It's hard to like set a bar and say who's above it and who's below it. It's more that there's certainly enough complexity to go around, and we shouldn't think of the Maya as the lesser developed of various cultures. They could compete with just about anybody.
Next question here.
Once you excavate a site and do restoration, how is it secured after you leave?
Well, at a place like San Bartolo, we actually put security at the site before we ever actually began excavations. So I found it in March of 2001. In April of 2001, we installed security at the site. We actually began documentation of the paintings with funding from the Peabody Museum and National Geographic in June of that year. So there were guards there for 3 months before we ever showed up. There have been guards at the site ever since. So for the last 15 years, there have been 4 guys living at that site year-round. They go on 22-day shifts, where they're there for 22 days, and they take 8 days off at home. Then they come back. So that's how they're protected. But in reality, I have to say, those guards don't really protect the site. Those guards report if anything happens. But they're not armed. They're not there to defend the site. They're there to report incidents. What keeps the site safe is the goodwill of the populations that live near the site. And San Bartolo is located in the middle of nowhere. We're about 50 kilometers from the nearest village, right? But that village, there are only about 65 to 80 families in that village. And all of them, in one way or another, are tied to the project at San Bartolo. Either they work there, or their brother works there, or someone else is a watchman at the site, or an excavator at the site, or their sister or mother does laundry that gets brought out from the site, or they drive a truck that brings supplies into the site. So the economy of Xultún is tied to the success of the project at San Bartolo and Xultún. And if looting takes place at either of those sites, then the projects will lose their permits and that work will disappear. And so it's in the best interest of those communities to protect those sites. And it's that goodwill more than the 4 guys living out there that really keep them safe.
Next question here.
It sounds like
Yep.
Can you hear? It sounds like succeeding generations at Xultún and San Bartolo, both built on top of buildings that had the murals, and they would kind of sometimes destroy the murals, I think you said, whatever. Was there no link really from one generation to the next, that they had no compunction about destroying the images of a king or rituals or whatever from the generation before in order to build theirs on top?
The idea that when the Maya build one building on top of the other, right, they're doing so not only as a destructive act. We see it sort of as destruction. For the Maya, in part, it's preservation, right? In part, it's actually consuming that building. It's taking the power of that building and transforming it into yours. So it's certainly a matter of respect, right? I mean, there's certain economy to it as well. If you want to build a 10-meter tall building, you got a 5-meter tall building. Rather than build it next door, you build it on top. But it also, when it covers that, it preserves that sacred space. If that was the spot of the ceremony, in the same way that St. Peter's is over the spot of the crucifixion of Peter, right, in Rome, like the same way that that ceremonial location is preserved with that connection through the architecture, that same thing's going on in Maya sites. So even though they're destroying parts of it, that location becomes more important than the building itself. Now, in very rare cases, the Maya preserve buildings in their entirety. They actually entomb the entire building. And one of those cases is from the site of Copan, the building of Rosalila, which is spectacular. They just totally entombed the structure. There's a building like that at Xultún as well, where they entombed the entire thing, all of its plaster masks, everything. We're still investigating that building as to what exactly is inside it that led them to treat it with such piety. The mural room at Xultún was treated with about as much respect as they ever treat other things. They actually filled that room in through the doorway, right? Usually the Maya collapse the ceiling, fill in the empty space, level it out, and build on top. At Xultún, they came in through the door, they built a column in the middle, and then filled it to support the ceiling, and then filled in around the column, and then walled up the door on their way out, and then built over the top. So they actually left that entire space preserved and intact, buried underneath the house floor of the building above it. So they treated that room differently than they treated the room next door to it. The room next door they raised to the bench. So you actually, if you were in the room next door, in this room, you're here. In this room, you're way up here. Climbed stairs up, you're on top of the room that used to house that mural. So there's certainly an indication that they keep track and they make those decisions on a case-to-case basis. Yeah.
Next question here.
Well, thank you very much. This has been very informative and provocative. I would like to ask if you could make any comparison of the status of the culture, these Mayans, versus what was going in Europe at, say, Columbus, and whether or not there's any way for the Mayans to have records to read about the myths very much earlier than what was going on when Columbus hit these shores.
Yeah, I mean, certainly Maya history goes back to around 400, that we're literate enough to read their history going back to around 400 AD. There's writing that goes back to around 400 BC, but we can't quite read it yet. At the time the Spanish arrived on the Yucatan Peninsula in the early 1500s, there were no cities on the peninsula that compared in size with those in Spain. The cities of the Mexica Empire, of the Aztec Empire in central Mexico, dwarfed any of the cities that existed in Spain. The largest city in Spain at the time was Seville. It was about 30,000 people. Tenochtitlan, which is under modern-day Mexico City, had a population of over 200,000 at that time. So the Spanish were often found themselves in awe of what they were seeing when they first encountered the people in the New World. The native populations found themselves underwhelmed from their native accounts, that they found the Spanish to be dirty, they found them to be uncivilized, and that they didn't bathe. They liked horses, thought the horses were really cool, never seen an animal like that because the largest animal they have is the deer. So a horse would be quite dramatic. They were impressed by the dogs. The Spanish war mastiffs were very impressive compared to these small Maya dogs that they were eating. Those were very different. But in terms of how they saw each other, each of them saw the other as, there were some aspects of it they didn't understand, but the Spanish talk about how that they were impressed, mainly based on their impression of the Caribbean islands, that the Caribbean islands were basic in the terms of as they expected, but this world of Mesoamerica, of the Maya, of the Aztec, of the Zapotec, of the highland kingdoms in Guatemala, these were things that they didn't expect to find and were very impressed with.
Or were they convinced that they were more advanced than Europeans?
Some were. Many were not. Most of them saw them as heathens to be subdued. Interestingly, the Maya saw the Spanish as heathens to be subdued. So, I mean, one of the things that I like to point out is, the Yucatan, right? The name Yucatan, right? the Spanish talk about it as though it meant, they like to say, it means the land of honey and deer. Yeah, it does not. It means I don't understand you, which is an awesome thing to think about. Sort of like, what do you call this place? I don't understand you. Oh, you call it I don't understand you. I mean, it's sort of an Abbott and Costello routine, right? I mean, that's what's going on, right? There's very little understanding in the communication that's going back and forth. So their impressions of each other, I said they both saw the other. There were some aspects that were impressive, and there were other aspects that they saw as totally unimpressive. And certainly the Maya resisted Spanish conquest for about 180 years in resistance. So it was not this thing that just happened overnight.
Cool. This will be the last question.
Do you know how big is this site and how is related with the rest of the cities around? Question one. And question two, I saw that you scanned the mural in order to record it.
Yep.
Do you think it's a good way to preserve the murals? Thinking in other murals, scanned every piece? Okay.
Yeah, there are two things. So in terms of the San Bartolo itself is relatively small, about a square kilometer. Xultún is currently known to be about 16 square kilometers. As we begin our investigations at Xultún, what's become apparent is that it's contemporary with San Bartolo, and we don't actually know if they're two places. It might end up being one place if we dig enough. It may still be two, but it may not be. Xultún, we have not defined its limits as yet. We've gone 8 kilometers away from the site, and we're still in the center of town. So it is a very, very large Maya site. And it spans in its dates from around 300 or 400 BC up until around 900 AD. So it is a large urban center that lasts for 1,500 years. So it is something for us to really consider. In terms of how it relates, it's at war with Tikal for a certain part of its history. It's probably aligned with Tikal for other parts of its history. It's interacting. Wives are being moved from Xultún to other Maya cities to establish alliance. So it's a player in a system that we're still trying to understand. In terms of scanning the paintings, that was done because, taking pictures of them wasn't really working, mainly because a tunnel is very small. You can't open a great big tunnel, and at the bottom of the tunnel, you're about 80 centimeters away from the painting, and at the top of the tunnel, you're at the painting. So all the pictures would have to be at oblique angles, and the fragments that I was finding in the fill, I was scanning to make a scale replica of each of those fragments. And then I could manipulate them on the computer and put the pieces back together. And I thought, it'd be great if I had like a baseline to put these back up on, like I could digitally restore the painting. So even if people could not get to it to see it, because it would be far off in the jungle always, and it would be deeply buried, even though we did the preservation work, they would be able to see it digitally. If only I could create this perfect replica of it. And so I took the scanner that I'd been using to put the pieces on. I thought, I wonder if this works on its side. And it does. It doesn't like it, but it does it. It lets you know it's unhappy. It makes a noise. You hold it up to its side, it's like, so it sort of struggles along, but it does the job. And so I took it out there. My students thought I was absolutely crazy because I show up out at the site. I've been scanning pieces back at the lab, back at camp. I show up out at site with a scanner under one arm, right, and this big extension cord and my computer under the other. And I'm like, this is going to be great. I have a feeling this is going to work. And I set it up and I put the scanner up on the wall and I hit scan. And it goes, and then the picture emerges on the computer. And it was actually part of the painting that we'd never been able to take a picture of, because there was a big rock that was really, about 4 inches away from it. And the camera could never quite get it, but we just put the scanner right up against it, and it was perfect. There were problems with the scanner. One is that the surface is a little bit irregular, and as a result, the scanner you use has to have the right depth of field. Also, you get light leaks, right, which alter the color tone of the scans, because it's obviously not designed to do that. And so we did it a second time. You also get rotational issues, make it hard to stick together. And so we came up with this plan as to what we would do to scan it a second time better. We set up a series of laser levels so that we could make sure the scan bed was level as we went across to eliminate rotational issues. We put a color bar, a standard Kodak photographic color bar on the scanner. So with each scan, we had a base color bar so that we could correct the colors back to a normal. We did that. And the problem was really the light leaks. And so we were like, we could develop a gasket so that when you put it on the outside of the scanner, you put it up on the wall and it would seal and no light would get in. And we talked about this, myself and the artist Heather Hurst. We talked about this for like a year. And then we were in the tunnel one day and I thought, hey, I know how we can get rid of those light leaks. She's like, what? And I went, click. Turned off the lights. like if you do it in the dark, there's no light to leak. So it only took a year. I'm not the brightest. I'm not, it's a good idea, it's just I'm slow. So but it worked out. And then we did it again, and the second time it worked out really, really very well. So remarkably, when we found Xultún, the technology was already in hand. We're like, oh, well, just bring out the old scanner and start scanning the walls again. And actually today, my son texted me an image today from a former student. He posted it on his Facebook page that was saying, using a scanner to document urban painting in Pittsburgh. Chenzo, tell your dad, thanks for ripping off the top of the scan bed. Like he just sent it to me today. I was like, great. So yes, so other people are using it. It is a great method to use because it creates a flat, two-dimensional image that's at full scale and whatever resolution you want to scan it at. A colleague of mine decided to do the same thing for mural fragments that he had found on the wall at a site called Holmul, or Sufricaya, north of Holmul, and he forgot about getting the scanner, and it's really only some scanners work, and he stopped at a Walmart on the Texas border, and he picked himself up a scanner, but the only scanner he could pick up was a combination printer scanner, copier, fax. Right? And so he picks up Francisco Stradabelli, shout out to Francisco, picks up this printer scanner, copier, fax, and is trying to hold this thing up on the wall, right, in order to scan this thing. But every time he puts it up on the wall, he hits the fax button. And so the thing stays put, and the scanner, the bed moves. And so it's like, pushing him out of the way, pushing him back. He was like, this thing is horrible. This never worked at all. So he didn't actually do it. It ended up becoming a habitat for ants. And that's what ended up happening. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bill. I mean, that was amazing. I feel like we just heard the classic hero story, who has to go through the trial by fire to come out the other side with the prize. That was amazing. Congratulations. And I certainly hope that in my post-proto-early middle age period, I have a modicum of excessive foolishness to use, especially in my lunch hour. Anyway, thank you all so much for coming on February 11th. We do our second program in the series. We're bringing the scientists who are really shifting our understanding of what happened to the Maya. And it should be very fascinating. So we hope you'll come back for that. And thanks for coming out. Good night.
Good night.